Charleston's current education system reflects Charleston itself.
Says there is a state of emergency in the Charleston County School District for African Americans and other minorities.
Right beneath the very polite Southern genteel veneer lies the ugly racial truth about this area.
Calhoun Street at 110 is Emmanuel. 75 Calhoun is where you are. If you continue to disrespect what happened at that church and what happened to those people by acting in a way that clearly sends a message to the black community that we have no place in front of this board to be respected or protected.
A protest, a walkout tonight. 3 Charleston County School Board members made their opposition to the closing of Lincoln Middle High School clear.
I want to find answers. I want solutions. And I think that's what we need here. We need to have this revolution in the Charleston County education system to make them more accountable to the people.
I'm always quick to tell people that when asked to tell the Millicent Brown story, I say that most of my experiences are predicated on 2 events that I had absolutely nothing to do with. When I was born, and then my second phenomenon is the family into which I was born. Right after Brown versus Board of Ed, Topeka, Kansas, a number of parents, including mine, began the process of trying to transfer my sister. And we were simply following up on this major change that had happened nationally. We weren't integrating to be with white people. We knew that we had excellent black teachers. We knew that it wasn't about if I sat next to a white child, I'm going to be smarter. We knew that the struggle was about our tax dollars were not being used to benefit our black community, but those same tax dollars were making sure that all white schools were resourced. The case that the NAACP started was the Minerva Brown case, and Charleston refused. South Carolina refused to abide by the Supreme Court decision in education. My sister graduated from Burke, and when she became a senior, they tried to throw out the case. They said, it's moot. You know, she's leaving, so therefore you have to start over. And my father took great pleasure in being able to go down to the courthouse and to get somebody to change Minerva Brown's name to Millicent Brown. He had what he used to always refer to me as his ace up his sleeve. So the case is officially Millicent Brown et al. Versus Charleston School Board District 20. We somehow got caught up in what my father infamously used to say, people think that the white man's ice is always colder. And it's very important that people today in the 21st century clarify that that's not what the struggle was. It never has been about the denying of one's background and roots. It was the parceling out equally and effectively the benefits that this society supposedly has to give.
And when you really look at this makes you wonder. We have the academic magnet school, one of the best schools in the state. The minority population is 40% in Charleston County. And yet we have 2 or 3% that goes to this academic magnet school. Are you telling me that vast majority of students, over, I would say, 20,000, and of that you can only get 2 or 3% to go to one of the best schools in the state? Something is wrong with that picture. But when you look at on the other end of the spectrum, the alternate schools, you have up to 75% of blacks. How did this happen?
Education has been and always will be the pathway to empowerment. However, there are those who have recognized some of the shortcomings as it relates to the African American experience in education. And so they've capitalized on that by using the historic failures of schools who were failures not so much because they could not perform, but because they were under-resourced, under-supported, or that they did not have the community support because of things like gentrification. Unfortunately, Charleston County School District has capitalized on that and used that as a tool to, once again, reduce the effectiveness of education as a tool for empowerment in the black community.
I've been on the board, I hate to say this, but since I've been on the board, that has been a constant thorn in our district, where we have some schools that have books from the first day, and some schools that don't have books into 6, 7, 8 weeks into school. We're talking about everything.
It seems to me that there's no guidance, there's no accountability, or if you will, there's no transparency.
I think the school board needs to view itself as accountable to all demographic groups, regardless of race or socioeconomic status, and it cannot continue to act as if it does not have to answer to anyone.
Stop wasting our time having a public meeting, but there's nothing we can say or do that will have any impression on you, any impact on what your policy is. So you might as well meet in public, do your business in public, and do like you did at the beginning of the meeting, come out and tell us what you did, because obviously what we say has no impact whatsoever in what you do. You continue to disrespect the African American community, and it's part of my responsibility to come and tell you the truth, whether you like it or not. Thank you.
We need school board members that are savvy enough and strong enough and committed enough to say, that doesn't sound fair. Wait a minute. You want us to approve funding for this school. We haven't even taken care of the kids at another school that don't have books.
They lost $18.1 million. You know how they try to balance that $18.1 million? They got rid of the vice principals. They got rid of a lot of the hands-on personnel that actually work with the students.
Are the school board members the culprit? For some things, yes. This ongoing need for educating ourselves about what's happening. Breaking out of this assumption that somehow somebody somewhere is looking out for my child.
Communities need to understand that they are the oversight of the local school board. That first has to be established, that these are elected individuals, and as such they answer to those who elected them. We already have enough problems within the current public school system, and it's been shown, especially here in Charleston County, that there is a distinct difference in the way things are handled in majority black schools versus the either interracially balanced schools of West Ashley or Wando.
In our first year as an organization, we tackled the high rate of youth incarceration through the use of a risk assessment instrument. Because of that risk assessment, the rate is declining, but not nearly as quick as we like it. In 2014 to 2015, Charleston County still led the state number in number of kids locked up per capita. We locked up almost 13% of our 10 to 16-year-olds. So 96% of the arrests of juveniles in our county are for non-violent charges. Over half of all the rest of the youth in our communities take place in our schools. And while Black students make up only 42% of the school population, they account for 83% of the school arrests.
You criminalize in a lot of ways. This person had walked into a school, a public school, and had noticed that instead of having calming music or some subtle way that we could tell people that it's time to go here, there, or whatever, how the sounds, the bells, have turned into reflecting what sounds people hear in jail. And it's almost like we're getting kids to respond to the noises they will hear ultimately once they become incarcerated.
It's not a young male who's going to a school system in first grade, and you have this teacher that's teaching him that has no idea of his culture, no idea of his language, and how he communicates. It is going to be a problem. This little black child look at the little white child in the classrooms and see that things are differently. Then all of a sudden you got a communication problem. But what good old South Carolina did was make it so that you can have a policeman come into that classroom to remove that child if the teacher deems it necessary.
Policies and procedures that prematurely push students, usually minority students, African American students, towards the criminal justice system at an early age. They include having school resource officers in schools, having a disproportionate number of student referrals in the African American population, internal policies and procedures regarding behavior and discipline that affect African Americans at a disproportionate rate. And basically what it is pulling in the very stereotypical mindset of racially profiling students early in the school environment and then leading them or pushing them towards either the family or juvenile court system.
How do you send people to prison? You demonize, criminalize people, whether they're walking down the street innocently or if they are guilty of minor crimes, and then we back it all into the schools. And we criminalize those actions that are simply adolescent misbehavior. And so, you know, it's no one level.
Then now when you look at this, now you're starting a pattern for this particular child. This particular child now is starting his journey into the juvenile system, and he is already being labeled. And then the disillusionment sets in by the time of third grade. Unfortunately, in many of our metropolitan areas and many of our cities, this is what we got.
When you look at central office staff, how many of those staff members reflect the demographic that's affected most? How many of those individuals in our schools reflect that demographic as well?
School systems have become a place for people losing hope, not seeing themselves represented in who's doing the teaching, not seeing themselves represented in success, and therefore psychologically they don't see themselves as part of this greater picture. And that's done in so many different ways.
So I am at the point now of saying I don't want these administrators to say that the parents are not taking care of the kids are not taking care of the kids are raising themselves. I want to find answers.
I think the whole "it's the parents' fault" also is a thinly veiled attack, especially on the African American community, because I very rarely, if at all, hear anyone speak negatively to parents of students in Wando or West Ashley. However, I will say that while parents do bear a significant amount of responsibility in the performance of their students, We also have to acknowledge as a community and as a society that schools have evolved, the educational system has evolved, and that evolution has not always included or even leaned towards the empowerment of parents and guardians into understanding what their role is. I've seen several parents do their best and support their students in whatever ways possible, but I have seen schools discount that because of their own negative perceptions that they hold for all students.
Blaming people, for example, who may have not been as well educated, who may have not had good experiences in schools. Now they are the parents, and now you're blaming them because they are not showing up at all the meetings and are not caring about PTAs or not participating. I mean, it's a vicious cycle of who you blame for not doing what, forgetting that the economics of the community have basically decided who gets paid what, who is then free to be a more engaged parent, who is a better educated parent. I mean, it's all a vicious cycle, and it's very disturbing that it's very easy to point fingers at people who themselves have not necessarily been given the best of opportunities, and now you're going to come around and blame them.
I know some of the children come from horrendous situations, but we can overcome those. The bottom line is that we're losing too many of our children. I would rather try hard to save them than to see them rot in prison or death.
You don't teach a bird how to swim or a fish how to fly. You teach them how to enhance whatever skills and gifts they have already. And unfortunately in education, we take the whole notion of a best practice model and we try to make that a blanket or an umbrella approach to everyone and everybody. But what we should expect out of every school is the ability to help students who are in attendance to reach down and perform to the best of their abilities.
We have to teach each other this idea of being a community means because my child escaped does not make it right. What sometimes wakes us up, whether you're white, black, rich, poor, is usually when something affects you personally. And all we have to do is look at the people who get stopped driving while black. The man who has his hands in the air, who gets shot and killed. That could be you. We have to accept that the things that are being done to people could also happen to us. And do we have the strength of character to have a commitment that says just because I dodged the bullet doesn't mean the bullets aren't being fired?